Okay, so what we're going to look at today is same stuff we've covered before, all right? Percents to decimals, decimals to percents, percents to fractions, all of that. But we will be looking at what you do when the percent is either greater than 100 or less than 1%, okay? So if you took the notes when we did them in class before, all you're going to need to do is add these examples to those notes because the steps, the way you solve it, stay the same. So the first one you can look for in your book is where you have your notes for changing a percent to a decimal. Now, if you don't have it, obviously you are going to get a second chance of writing this down. Okay, but I would first look to see if you can easily find your notes for changing percent to decimal. Okay, because the steps are the same. It's just now we're going to be dealing with numbers that are bigger than 100% or less than 1%. So your examples are what you're going to want to add. All right, so for those of you that maybe don't have your notes, okay, when you're changing a percent to a decimal, the first thing you have to do is remove the decimal point. Or the percent sign, I'm sorry. Because it's not going to be a percent anymore, it's going to be a decimal. Then, someone tell us what we do next. When we're changing a percent to a decimal, we get rid of the percent sign. Then what do? Leah? Yes. You move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Okay, and that should already be in our notes. If it's not, it needs to be. Okay, so before when we talked about this, we only dealt with percents that were between 1% and 100%. Okay, so today what we're going to look at is percents that are over 100 or percents that are less than 1%. It doesn't change how we solve the problem though. So again, those of you that have good notes may just want to write these examples. So if I got all my IXLs to 100% or to a SMART score of 100, you would get a 12 out of 10. Okay, that is 120%. So even though percents are always out of 100, it is possible to have more than 100% on something. Okay, that's called extra credit. So the more you do this, eventually you're going to be able to look at this and not have to write it with a decimal point and move the decimal point. You'll just be able to look at that and know exactly what it would be as a decimal. All right? But we're going to go through the steps just so we understand. Remove the percent sign. So we have 120. Where is the decimal point in the number 120? Mason? It is. It's a whole number. So remove the decimal point. Then you have to know where the decimal point is. Okay? You are going to move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Same as before. So what is 120% as a decimal? How would we write it as a number? Mason? And you don't have to read it correctly. If you want to just say the digits, that's fine. 1.20. Yes, and you actually don't have to have that 0. It would just be 1.2. It would not be wrong if you had 1.20. Okay? So 120% as a decimal is 1 2/10. So this goes back to where we have to look at our answers and see if they make sense. Percents are always out of 100. So this is greater than 100%. It's more than 100. Therefore, when it's written as a number, it's going to be more than 1 because 100% represents 1. Okay? So when you change your percent to a decimal, if the percent is more than 100, your decimal is going to be more than 1. And like I said, eventually you'll be able to go from here to here and skip that middle step. Like you'll be able to visually do that kind of in your mind. Like, okay, the decimal point's here. I'm going to move it back 2 places. This is what it is. But in the meantime, you can always write the decimal point and move it back 2 places. Okay. Dominic, can you set that down again today? That way we don't have it making noise for us. All right. Let's say someone was super generous and gave you lots of extra credit opportunity, and you ended up with 236%. Okay. Now, again, some of you may be able to look at that and automatically know what that's going to be as a decimal. I hope you get there. Okay. That's the goal. But we're going to go through the steps just in case. So we're going to remove the percent sign. So now I have 236. Where's the decimal point in the number 236? Mateo? It is. So I just have to move it to the left 2 places. So what is 236% as a decimal or as a number? Mateo? Perfect. Greater than 100% must be bigger than 1. Okay? Nothing is different. Now let's look as if our percents were less than 1%. Okay? So maybe we completely forgot to do our assignment and we maybe only got like 1 question right. And technically we didn't do all that we were supposed to do. So we got like 0.5%. So if 0.5% is not even 1 full percent, we should know our answer should be nowhere near 100, right? We're not even at 1%. Okay, so to change it to a decimal, remove the percent sign. So it's still 0.5. Then you're going to move that decimal point to the left 2 places. What do we fill empty spaces with that don't change values, Scarlett? Perfect. So as a decimal, 0.5% would be 5 thousandths. Okay, so when you change 0.5%, decimal points here, move it back 2 places, fill our empty space with a 0. So we end up with 5 thousandths as a decimal. Okay, which would make sense because 100% is 1. So if we have 0.5%, we're not even close to 1. All right. See you tomorrow. All right. If we have, let's say, 0.2%, go through the steps, change that to a decimal, and then we'll talk about it together. All right. Who besides our two regulars, Mason and Mateo, think they might know what this would be as a decimal? It's just like number 3. Don't give it away. Make them think. All we got to do is move a decimal point. Come on, guys. You don't have to be able to read the number. You can read me the digits, if that helps any. Leah, what do we think it is? Super close. Yes. That's okay. All right, so to do that, we remove our percent sign. So we still have 2 tenths. That number does not change. You're just getting rid of the percent sign. Then you move the decimal point back 2 places. We fill empty spaces with 0. And you always want a 0 in front of your decimal point if there's no number. Okay? Now, next thing we're going to look at is changing a percent to a fraction. So again, you should have this written down somewhere. And we're just adding more to it because we're dealing with different numbers. So the next thing we're going to look again is changing percent to fraction. So you can take a few seconds, find that page in your notes, because the steps are the same. It's just I'm going to give you examples that have numbers bigger than 100. Now, if you're looking at your notes that we did last week, I made it a little more detailed because that was the first time we went over it. I'm not making it that detailed this time. I believe when we did it the first time, my first step was your percent becomes your numerator. My second step, your denominator is 100, okay? And then there was a special note. If it's an improper fraction, you change it to a mixed number. I'm condensing that just a tad. So your first step, you are writing the percent over 100. Okay, doesn't mean you need to change your notes if you're looking at the ones from before. Those are just more detailed. Oh, not over fraction. Write percent over 100. Sometimes when I talk, I don't write correctly. Okay, then we had that special note. You have to change improper fractions to mixed numbers. And that's what we're going to use today. So all of these are going to deal with numbers that are over 100%. So if you have these notes from before, you can just add these 2 examples. Bless you. Okay, so this is going to work the same way. Eventually, you will be able to look at this number, the percent, and automatically go to your fraction. Okay, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. In the meantime, we're going to do the middle step that kind of explains everything. So, write the percent over 100. So you would simply take 150 and put it over 100. Write the percent over 100. That's simple. Now, when these were less than 100%, you were done. Okay? If it was 75%, it's 75 over 100. If it was 23%, it's 23 over 100. And you are finished. This is where that special note comes into play. What do we call this kind of fraction? Yes, and it's written right above it. Why is it improper? What makes it improper? You covered this in 4th and 5th grade. What makes that fraction improper? Improper means like it's not right. Like there's something wrong with it. James? Perfect. Your numerator is bigger than your denominator. Okay? We can't have that. So we have to change that to a mixed number. A mixed number means there's a mixture of something. There's a whole number and there's a fraction. Here's how we do that. These will be easy enough because the denominator is 100 that you can probably do it in your head. If not, I'll show you how to actually do the division in a minute. How many times does 100 go into 150? Jordan? Not 5, that would be 500. Think again, you got it. How many hundreds are in 150? If I count by hundreds.
1.
Yes. So your whole number would be 1. How many is left over? Mason? What was it?
50.
Yes. 50 is your numerator. Denominator stays the same. So 150 as a fraction would be 1 in 50 hundredths. Okay. Now IXLs want you to reduce, which you've covered before. iLearn does not, so we're not focusing on reducing. Okay. Now, if you need to see how that division actually works, you would take your numerator of 150, divide it by your denominator of 100. Goes in one time, like Jordan told us. We've got 50 left over. This remainder becomes your numerator, denominator stays 100. So that's where we get 1 in 50 hundredths from. Okay. One more. If we had 275%. All right. Now, some of you will probably be able to just jump to the mixed number. And that's the point you want to get to. If not, switch it to a fraction first, then change it to a mixed number. Take a few seconds. Try to do that on your own. All right, what would 275 be as an improper fraction? Not mixed number yet, but improper fraction. Mateo?
2,700.
Okay. And then what would that be as a mixed number, the way it should be written? I know. Leah?
2,700.
Whole number of 2. 100 goes into 275 twice. You have 75 left over, and then you have 100. Now, I'm going to throw something else in here. Writing that as a decimal. If you can read the fraction, you can write it as a decimal, right? Because we know our place value. How would I write this as a decimal? 2 and 75 hundredths. Don't read it to me. Give me the digits. James.
2.75.
Yes. This is why we need to be able to read numbers. Okay? 2 and 75 hundredths. That's how you would read that. 2 and 75 hundredths. You can change it to a decimal. That's doing all three of them. Percent to fraction to decimal. Okay? Then I want to just briefly review. We'll go way up here at the top. Okay? If we have a decimal and we're changing it to a percent. Percent to decimal, we went to the left 2 places. What do we do when we're going from a decimal to a percent? Okay, I'll say that again. I know I at least have 2 gentlemen that weren't even close to paying attention. Percent to decimal. We move to the left 2 places. What do we do when we're going from a decimal to a percent? Leah?
Right, okay.
Yes, we go to the right 2 places. Okay, your notes are going to be super important to you on Monday for sure. Okay, so again, I went over this with my 3rd hour also. Okay, my agendas that I type for you, please listen, because probably those of you not listening are the ones that don't know this. I don't type these nice organized agendas for myself. I have a lesson plan that I type that tells me all of that. All right. This is so you know what's going on and so that your parents know that what's going on. No one should ever have to ask me what we're doing. Okay. Also, I am sure I'm going to have some of you in a few minutes that don't have your book. What could you have looked at this week to know that you needed your book today? James?
That says P 1 to 1.
And what does it say after that?
4 to 4.
No, I know. After that part.
Oh, that.
Read to me what it says. This?
This will be done in your math book.
We might need our math book today, right? My agendas are for you and your parents. Look at them. So, a lot of times when we're going to take a test, if tomorrow what we're doing is a decimal, fraction, and percent review, what might be coming after that? Yes, usually the day before a test, we do a review. And if you look at week 9, not all of it's filled out. But anytime I'm giving a test, I typically know that, and it's on the agenda. Okay? Always make sure you look at the agenda so you know what's going on for the week. Now, what you're going to do today, and I don't want you pulling it out yet because I've got to show you something else. I am sure there are going to be a few of you that don't have your book with you. So what I've done in Canvas, okay, if when you're in Canvas, you go to our modules. Now mine looks slightly different because obviously I can see more than you can. You're going to have only one module that you can see, book pages. I've attached a picture of the page you're doing in modules. So if you didn't bring your book, you're going to have to use the picture from Canvas and write it on a piece of paper. So those of you that do have your book, I want you to carefully tear out page 121, and then I'm going to talk about it. I'll give you about 30 seconds to get it out and tear it out, and then we need to be quiet.